You might think that you know what your normal feels like, but here's the thing: if you drink regularly, your so-called normal isn't actually your real baseline. It's just kind of like a gap between the highs and the lows of alcohol. And the scary part is that most drinkers spend years never actually meeting their true self in their true balanced state. When you drink, your mood shifts. For some, it's silly, fun, outgoing. For others, it can be negativity. But either way, it changes your frequency, the vibration, if you want to call it that. It's an artificial high and then a crash. Your brain releases GABA to relax you, then it rebounds with the excitatory neurotransmitters that make you stressed and anxious. So you drink, you go up, and then you come crashing down, and then you kind of hover somewhere in the middle until the next time. But here's the problem: if you drink a few times a week, your body never really resets. It actually takes at least 2 or 3 weeks of complete abstinence for your brain chemistry to start finding its natural balance again. Well, that's what the research shows. But most people never give themselves that time. They'll drink on a Friday night, maybe even a Saturday, maybe even midweek, and then they think that the days in between, when they feel normal, are their baseline. But really it's not. It's just the lull between one drink and the next. And that was exactly what my weeks used to look like. Friday was often the big one. I'd go out late drinking, probably way too much. Saturday morning, I'd wake up hungover. I'd drag myself through the day, and sometimes I'd still get things done, but I was always feeling dreadful. Then Saturday night would come around and I'd drink again, partly to take the edge off the hangover, but also partly because, well, I don't know, that's just what I did. Sunday, there'd be sort of a fallout. I'd be nursing the hangover and maybe even have a few drinks sort of later in the day to ease it a bit. Then Monday would hit like a wall. I'd feel awful. I'd force myself through the day. Sometimes I'd manage Monday and Tuesday without any drinking at all. But by Wednesday, I'd start to feel a bit more like myself again. And that's when the voice in my head would be like, oh, go on, treat yourself. So I'd drink midweek, feel fuzzy on Thursday, and then Friday it was time to do it all again. And that cycle repeated for a number of years. That was kind of like my normal. But looking back now, that's not normal at all. It was just an endless loop where I just never really came up for air. And here's where this can be backed up with science. Like, studies show within about 2, maybe 3 weeks of quitting alcohol, your brain volume begins to recover, especially in areas tied to mood, focus, and memory. By around 3 weeks, depression and anxiety symptoms often lift dramatically. 4 to 6 weeks, even that subacute withdrawal, the flat moods, the low energy, that starts to fade. And by 2 months, your cognitive functions, things like memory, focus, emotional control, should be improving. And by about 6 months or more, we're talking structural healing in the brain and real visible recovery. So when you're drinking a few times a week, you never give yourself that window to let that happen. Your brain is always fighting to get back into balance, and it never gets the time. What happens when you do give yourself that space, when you actually stop for long enough, is that your baseline shifts. You lose the crazy highs for sure, but you also lose a lot of those heavy lows. And what you're left with is this kind of steadier, calmer middle ground. But the thing is, it's not flat, it's not boring. That middle ground is actually higher than the kind of normal that you thought was your baseline. Day to day, you're clearer, lighter, just more genuinely content. You actually discover who you are without the chemical roller coaster sort of pulling you around. Someone I met recently told me that she would drink around about 5 nights a week. And for her, it was the excitement, it was the thrill, the dopamine hit that she would get from it. She was chasing the kind of the good times. But that's the thing, when we drink that regularly, how can we really know what we're truly feeling? If we chase highs like that, we aren't likely to ever really know how we feel when we're like normal, because our bodies won't be able to get back into balance without barely a whole day going by without messing with your mind and body balance. So if you do drink regularly and you think you know what normal is, chances are you don't, because your true baseline is something you might have never met. And if you give yourself a few weeks, you might find it's not just steadier, but it's actually higher, lighter, happier, probably more than you could have even imagined. And that is really the beauty of sobriety. You don't just escape the chaos, you finally get the chance to meet the real you, what that feels like in your mind and your body. So if you want to learn ways to discover who you really are without the fog of alcohol blurring it from view, keep on watching in the third person. I'll see you next week.